Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Wednesday the 23rd of March, and our Wednesdays are limited. We'll tell you more in a bit. Joining me on this edition, our assistant editor Steve Withers.
This is why Superman works alone.
And news editor Mark Hodgkinson.
Let's kick some ice.
Right, so we're run down. However, looking through Facebook, Steve, that hi-fi show was on at the weekend. You know, the one where everybody takes their own bits of kettle on
yes.
Scaffold Hall. And guess who was exhibiting there over the weekend? And in the photographs, guess whose exhibit had copious amounts of alcohol being consumed. Call me cynical.
We don't believe you, Ed.
Ed is pulling a sickie. And moving on swiftly, it's 5-star review times, and P. Welly, that's P. Welly, not peed in his welly. Informative and witty, 5 stars, the in-betweeners of the podcast world, highly recommended.
Splamoni, or possibly Splamone, I don't know how it's actually pronounced. Great way to stay informed of new tech, 5 stars.
And Wazza1 says, it's like going to a tech show and buying up all the latest magazines. But really, I'm just driving and listening. I feel bang up to date with the best of home AV tech.
Anthony1507 says, great podcast and plenty of banter. Keep it up, gents.
And Chris M UK says, great podcast, 5 stars, excellent, informative and entertaining.
And if you want your name read out on the AV Forums podcast, all you have to do is go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. It can't be anything less than 5 stars.
Not that we're bribing you or anything like that.
We're up to 67, which is good. The reason we ask you to give us a 5-star rating, only if you feel like we deserve it, of course, is to get more people involved in the AV Forums podcast, get it out there, get people interested in the hobby, and likewise, get more questions coming in, more subjects to talk about, and so on. So please, leave us the ratings. It is helpful. Current competitions, Mark's going to tell us all about them.
You can still win The Warriors on Blu-ray, and that's open to active members until the 4th of April, 2016.
Okay. Any previous competition winners, Mark?
No, I'm afraid not, Phil, not this week.
Okay, I'll just have to hang in there for next week and see if there's any winners next week.
The week after, won't it?
Before we go any further as well, I did mention at the top of the podcast that our Wednesdays are limited, and they are, dear listener. The podcast will only be going out on Wednesdays until the 6th of April. And then after the 6th of April, you actually get the podcast 2 days earlier. You'll get the podcast on a Monday. So from Monday the 11th of April, the podcast has a new home, and like I say, you get 2 days earlier. And hopefully, one of the things that we have been finding is that we're talking about stuff that's sometimes a week old. So hopefully, by recording on the Friday and putting it out there on the Monday, things are a little bit more up to date, and it's an easier record day as well. So we won't get sickies being pulled on a Friday. Oh, hang on, that's not going to work. A Friday
after Thirsty Thursday, tricky.
Might be. So anyway, we'll be moving to record on a Friday, and as of the 11th of April, the podcast will be out on a Monday. But the easiest way to get the AVForums podcast is to subscribe, and you can do that through iTunes. Subscribe to the podcast, and it'll automatically download as soon as it appears, and you'll never miss another episode. Okay, so let's move on. Hardware news, and we're going to start with Sim2. Now, we haven't heard much from Sim2 in a while, and tragically, the UK managing director of Sim2, Alan Roser, passed away after last year's Bristol show. In fact, it wasn't very long after last year's Bristol show, very sadly. And he was a great character. He's a big friend of AVForums. He helped us out at the Gadget Show. Back in 2012 at the Gadget Show, he put together a fantastic demonstration with a Sim2 Lumix projector, a big sound system, all packed into what was quite a compact room. We were showing 3D content and so on, and Alan and his team run the demos there. And I guess most AVForums members will know Alan from the Bristol Sound and Vision show. He kind of made that show his own for quite a number of years. He always demonstrated stuff that, you know, your common man would never be able to afford, but his sole purpose was to show you what was capable, aspire you to bigger and better things. And he always put together some real cutting-edge demos at the time. I mean, I think it was the first time that anamorphic technology had ever been shown to the UK public. 235 screen with an anamorphic lens that moved in and out in front of the projector. 3D and triple flash 3D was first demonstrated in the UK by Alan. So he really was a big, genuine guy who loved AV. He was always there for you. He was always happy to answer any questions, no matter who you were. He would take the time to go through stuff. And even if you couldn't afford what Sim 2 had to offer, he was a home cinema fan, and he was always full of good advice on how to get the best out of the products that you could afford. So sadly missed Alan. And I guess it's really nice, Steve, to see that Sim 2 are releasing 2 new projectors, but one of them, the new high-end projector, is going to be called the Alan Rosa.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think Alan is synonymous with Sim 2 in this country. I think for a lot of people, his demonstrations at Bristol were their first experience of just what projection could look like, because most people probably experience projection in pubs or in boardrooms or at school or whatever. He showed people what it was capable of. Admittedly, it was a very high-end demonstration, but still, people get their first experience of real projection, home cinema projection at the Bristol show. So that was something he's remembered for. I'll never forget that night when, after the gadget show, where everyone had gone home and the show was closed, and we sat in that demo room, and he cranked it up so high that we lifted the ceiling off of the entire demo room, which was quite an achievement. And he was a great guy. So this is a really touching tribute to Alan, I think, by calling the new projector they're calling it the AR1, and the AR stands for Alan Rosa. It's one of their really high-end projectors too. So they've kind of possibly, I'd say might be, since we're reaching the end of Full HD's life cycle to a certain extent, this might be one of the last great Full HD projectors that Sim 2 does, and I think it's very fitting that it should bear Alan's name, and I think it's a touching tribute.
One of the big things of Sim 2 has always been the lenses, and of course you pay for glass. Glass is really expensive, which is where the vast majority of the costs actually go when you're looking at a Sim 2 projector. Also, the chassis size, being able to have a chassis that size and silently cooled as they are, but it's the glass that you're paying for, and I've always appreciated the fact that with a Sim 2 projector, what you're getting on screen is ultra sharp. And a lot of the DLP projectors that a lot of people will be familiar with are under £2,000. So a lot of the time they come with plastic elements in the lenses and so on. The actual quality of these things are in the glass, and it's always been, certainly every time I've seen a Sim, it's always been the thing that I've noticed is just how nice the optics are, and what a big difference good optics make in a projector.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and you're right, Phil. I mean, the majority of projectors people experience are probably at the lower end of the price scale. They're using plastic lenses, or perhaps a combination of glass and plastic in some cases. But when you see a projector that's using really, really high quality, all glass lenses, the difference is quite remarkable, and that's one of the big reasons why Sim 2 projectors were quite expensive, or are quite expensive. I was lucky enough to review the C3X a few years ago, and it delivered an absolutely stunning picture. And I think people could sometimes forget that it's easy for us to get caught up in the technology, and things move on, and we're talking about things like 4K and HDR and all this sort of stuff. But it's easy to forget that you can still get an absolutely stonking image out of a Full HD projector when it's done well with a really good source like Blu-ray. It can look absolutely amazing, and people need to remember that. I think there was always that massive debate when we moved to Full HD that if you had a really, really good 720p projector, it could look stunning and it didn't have to be Full HD. And I think that still applies to a certain extent now. It's not necessarily about the resolution; it's about the quality of the lenses, it's about the quality of the projector itself. How accurate the colors are. These kind of things really play into it. How impressive and how good an image can be. And Sim 2 deliver stunning images. And I guess they've been a bit quiet of late because they are dependent on Texas Instruments for the DLP chip. And as of yet, there isn't an affordable sort of, home cinema DLP chip that's 4K. And there are 4K chips for the professional market. And I know Sim 2 do make available a 4K projector, but it's basically a professional projector at a ridiculous, like £150,000 price point. I mean, that's not really realistic for the majority of people. But still, I see they're still delivering high quality Full HD projectors, and I'm really glad to see that they've done the AR1. I think it's a great looking projector in terms of its specs, but also I think it's a lovely tribute to Alan. Yep,
absolutely. And like you say, I mean, people sometimes ask me, what would you rather have, a TV or a projector? And I always say projector, and the reason I always say projector is not just the size of the image that you can get, Steve, in a good cinema room. There's just something about the projected image. It's just something that it looks a certain way, it comes across a certain way, it's a certain size, and when used in a really light controlled room, a good home cinema with a big sound system to go with this big image, I think TV struggle, even the 75-inch TV struggles to give you the same kind of impact. And we're talking about Sim 2 at one end of the market, but one of the things, and it's something that we're going to move on to in a few weeks' time when we get closer to the Euros, is just how affordable projection is now, and how easy it is to set one up. If you've got a white wall, it's not ideal, but if you've got a white wall and you pick up one of these DLP projectors, it's under £1,000, and some 3D glasses and so on, you can have an absolutely brilliant experience at home for not a lot of layout, and it's something which can be put away in the cupboard and brought out for big occasions like the Euros or like the Olympics and so on. So that's something we're going to be looking at in a few weeks. And the other flip of the coin is that home cinema projectors, there are not as many manufacturers involved as there used to be. I mean, we used to have Sanyo and Panasonic and a couple others that were regulars in the home cinema market. I notice Epson as well haven't really sort of updated their normal LCD line in about 2 years now. So I think we're seeing with some companies are moving into 2-year cycles, but there are those at the forefront like JVC and Sony who are still releasing some really good projectors. And recently I've been sitting watching the HW65, which is a new SXRD full HD projector. And like he said and hinted at, that sitting looking at a really nice 1080p image on a big screen with a big sound system, who needs 4K? And to be honest with you, I've been pretty much blown away by this projector's picture quality, because it's only £2,800. Yes, the HW40 is a bit cheaper, but this has obviously been updated a little bit, so it has a slightly better lens layout, slightly more lumens over the outgoing HW55, and it also has 3D on board, active 3D, which is really good. It's one of these things with Sony, because I had the VW520 in recently, and the 3D sucked on that, and that was an 8,800.
Yeah, they're very iffy when it comes to 3D.
Yeah.
Sometimes great, sometimes not so great. I've had some disappointing experiences and some amazing experiences with Sony projectors. It's a bit of a lottery sometimes.
Yeah, and going into the settings and trying to sync the glasses up with the settings and get the settings just right. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. On this one, absolutely perfect. And I put Man of Steel in because I bought it recently, as I said in previous podcasts, for about £4 for the 3D version. And I thought, I'll watch the start of this just to see what the 3D is like. And 2 hours later, as the credits roll, really, really nice experience. The glasses were not overly dark, but they had a good film in there, which with the 3D mode, the colours looked fairly accurate. I mean, they weren't accurate, but it looked fairly accurate. Skin tones weren't green or anything outrageous. They actually looked like good skin tones, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience with that. The only downside, and when you're at this price point, it is a downside, is the black levels, and the Sony is good, but lacking in shadow detail, which you do find at this price point and below. Shadow detail tends to disappear, and what you tend to find is that you have large areas of black on screen, where on a more expensive step-up projector like a JVC X5000, you would see the shadow detail and so on, whereas at this price point, it's not there. But at 2,800, I'd be very, very happy. I'd be happy with an HW40, to be honest with you, because set up properly on a big screen in a proper back cave, they are absolutely stonking projectors at the money.
HW40 is a staggeringly good value. You can get it for about $1,400, I think, now, and it doesn't have the dynamic RS, but I, to be honest, wouldn't use it anyway. And I think it delivers a really, really good picture. I think you don't get the dynamic, you don't get the lens memory either, but otherwise you're getting pretty much all the performance you're getting out of something like the HW55 or HW65 at a really good price. Of course, that price point, that's the one to beat.
Yeah, of course the 65, it doesn't have lens memory either. You've got to manually do that, but yeah, it's had that same chassis for probably about 5 or 6 years now, that HW line. So it is a manual affair and so on. But saying that, it took all of 30 seconds to go back, put the zoom out, and move the lens slightly to fit it onto the scope screen, and didn't really have to change the focus at all. One thing it did do very well was hold the focus. There was no sometimes on lesser priced machines you do have issues with focusing because you're using lesser elements within the lenses, and sometimes you can get in focus at one point in the screen, it'll be out of focus, slightly out of focus at other points. It was very good, uniformly sharp right across focus wise. So like I say, it was like 30 seconds to change that. I guess it would get annoying if you had to keep doing that all the time, but if your collection's like mine, most of the movies that I watch are 235, and when I go back to 16:9, because I've got such a big screen anyway, it's still a big screen area, 16:9. So I don't really. What I tend to find is that when you have projectors like the HW65, because I don't have black masking at the sides for a 185 or a 178 ratio, that you notice more with the blacks. You notice that they're more lacking because you haven't got that black edge to the image. But yeah, really, really impressed. £2,800, I think it is, coming to market, this one. And again, it's another stonking machine from Sony. And full HD, well, vast majority of stuff you're going to watch, even when we get these new players in the next couple of weeks, you're still going to be watching the vast majority of stuff on Blu-ray at full HD. And I haven't seen any reason to spend $8,000 on a 4K native projector yet.
No, not at all. Definitely think, spending that kind of money, I did definitely wait, see how things, pan out with everything. And in the meantime, let's not forget that, full HD Blu-ray can look absolutely stunning. Kaz just put a review up with A Good Dinosaur, and he was talking about, how incredible the image quality was on that disc, and it's still capable of a really amazing picture. So, don't just because there's new stuff coming down the pipe, don't give up on things like full HD just yet. Still a great performance to be had there, particularly when you go projector.
Yeah, totally. And like I say, next few weeks we'll start getting into projectors, the more budget-end projectors, because we've got the Euros coming up and so on. I always like the idea of a street party, and I think you can do it nowadays, where get a projector out, get shown on the side of the house, have your barbecue and all the rest of it, watch the football. I think because the prices are dropping on these things and they are becoming, I wouldn't say throwaway, but they're becoming very reasonably priced compared to other bits and pieces of kit, that you can pick these things up and get some excellent performance from them for very little cash these days. So we'll come back to that subject. Let's move on to some audio. Arcam AVR850. Now, to be fair to Arcam, they do make some beautiful stuff. I can remember back to some of the older processors, home cinema processors. I can't for the life of me remember the model number, but I used to drool over that, and I've drooled over quite a bit of their kit in the past. They had a few issues with software a number of years ago with the AVR600. They had some issues with software and so on, but I think they're now kind of bounced back, haven't they, Steve? They're making a simpler but more or less bulletproof product these days, and really going for audio quality above all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think by their own admission, they had some issues with reliability in the past. It was partly due to third-party stuff they bought in that let them down, basically. They've therefore taken the approach now of basically developing everything in-house so they can ensure it's reliable. And as you say, Phil, they've also gone for a very stripped-back, simplified approach to their AVRs, which I don't think is a bad thing. Some of the AVRs you see now, there's so many features on them that you must don't even know where to start. And you get a front panel covered in buttons, a remote control covered in buttons, a back panel full of connections you're never going to use. And you think, well, do I need all this? What I really want to do is listen to a movie. And Arcam's approach has been very much to strip all that back. So if you look at the back panel, in terms of video, it's just HDMI. 7 HDMI in, 3 HDMI out, and they all support HDCP 2.2 and HDMI 2.0A. So you've got a bit of future-proofing going on there. That's great. There's no need for composite. There's no need for component. People aren't using that anymore. They've stripped back a lot of the audio stuff too. There's still some analog inputs. There's still coaxial and optical inputs. But they've kept it very simple. And I think that's the right approach. I think a lot of people are put off by AVRs when they see the back panel and think, oh my God, what's all that about? Front panel, again, very clean, very simple and minimalist. They brought the volume dial back, which is good, because that was missing on the previous generation, the AVR750. Brought that back. It's a very simple display. There's a few buttons on the front, and remote control is nice and simple too. One little point about the remote control: if you press a button and say, for the BD input, it then assumes it's controlling the BD player. You have to press the little button that says amp in order to control the AVR with the remote control again. I didn't realize that at first, and that was very frustrating when I couldn't work out why nothing was working anymore.
Well, you've obviously never owned an Onkyo receiver then, because they were always bad for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know why they do that. It's a strange little quirk, but anyway, once you know
CEC,
no, it's just the remote control. Nothing to do with anything like that. It's just the remote. But press the little lamp button again on the remote, and it's controlling the remote. It's controlling the AVR again. So it's just a little quirk. Once you know it, it's fine. But when you initially don't realise that, and you're going, why isn't the volume changing?
Because we never read owner's manuals, do we? Yeah.
Not if I can help it. No. Anyway, so nice, simple remote controls. The menu system is very simple, a little bit too. I mean, it looks a little long in the tooth, very dated. Could do with an upgrade there. Although the remote app is actually very nice and quite useful. So in that sense, they've gone for a simplified approach. So there's very little of the bells and whistles you find on some of the receivers now. It's all about sound quality for them, and quite rightly so, in my opinion. Now, we mentioned it in last week's podcast, which is that it's only got 7 channels of built-in amplification, 7 channels of Class G amplification, and their argument was that they would struggle to get any more channels inside the chassis and maintain sound quality. And I guess that's fair enough. And also, and Ed made the argument last week, and again, I think it's a good point. People can buy this receiver with the intention of running a 7.1 channel system, and then they have the option, should they wish to later, to add overhead channels and do Atmos or DTSX, and that's fine. And also, Arcam are going to be releasing a 4-channel Class G amp to go with this if you want to add the extra 4 channels.
Actually, if you're talking about just the extra 4-channel ceiling channels or height channels, is depending on what you want to call them, for those reasons, I'm running cheapest chips, JBL Control 1s as my ceiling speakers. You are doing the same too. So there's no need really to go and shell out a massive amount of money on a power amp, really. Just get one that works, basically. You don't have to spend thousands.
Yeah, for the review, Arcam very kindly brought over two P49 power amps. I think 300 watts per channel. A little bit too much for the JBLs, really, a little unnecessary. But I mean, that was just for the purpose of the review. They brought them across, so I could do a full 7.1.4 Class G, setup. But you're right. You could just get some much cheaper amplification for the overheads, because you're probably only going to be using smaller speakers anyway. And certainly that's my case for me and for you. The big selling point, other than the inclusion, obviously, because I reviewed the AVR850 last year, and did point out that it felt a little dated because it was towards the end of its life cycle when we got it in for review, and obviously with things like Dolby Atmos already available and DTS coming, you kind of think like it would be nice to have that option. Obviously, the AVR850 addresses that; it has already got Atmos. They will be adding DTSX at some point in the near future. But the really big selling point, and probably the big surprise when it was announced, because it kind of came out of nowhere, is the addition of Dirac Live. Now, Dirac Live is a room correction software. We've experienced it before when I did the review of the RS20i, the datasat processor that had Dirac Live. Obviously, that's like 17, 18 grand. And this is certainly, even at £4,000, I think 4,200 for the AVR850, this is still getting Dirac at a much lower price point than in the past. And it's incredibly sophisticated. I mean, this is a really, really powerful room EQ system, far in excess of what you'd normally find on an AVR. And I've been impressed with it before, and was impressed with it again with the AVR850. It really does work. I've got a few issues when it comes to the lower frequencies in my room that it totally nailed, and it's something that a lot of software struggles to deal with. But this one is really sophisticated, very flexible, can do a lot of things. The only thing it doesn't do currently, but apparently this is going to be added in the future as well, is it doesn't currently EQ the overhead speakers, so it just does the delay and the levels at the moment. But that is going to be added at some point in the near future. So, I think very sophisticated. The way it actually works is you actually run the software on your laptop. You connect it to the AVR850, and it runs on the laptop, goes through the whole very intuitive process. It's a nicely laid out user interface. I really like it. Go through the whole process. It takes you through it, holds your hand through the whole thing. And at the end, you actually could contact Dirac in Sweden. You actually contact their mainframe computer, which runs all the calculations and then loads it back onto your laptop to then load onto the AVR850. So, I mean, they're actually using a full mainframe to do the calculations back in Sweden, which is quite impressive. And now, obviously, I was doing this myself because, from the point of view of the review, I wanted to actually get to grips with the Dirac and see how it works and everything else. If you buy an AVR850, generally what Arcam recommend is that their dealer installs it, sets it up for you, and they'll be using a high-quality calibrated mic. I mean, there is a microphone in with the receiver itself, but it's not as good as you could get. So they'll come around with them. I was using, again, Arcam gave me an XTZ calibrated mic to use for the setup. That's a much higher quality than the one that comes with the actual receiver. But very impressive in terms of room correction. Really impressive receiver, Class G amplification, sounds great, plenty of headroom, really dynamic. I was very impressed with it. I thought it was a great sounding receiver. And if you've got £4,200 and you're thinking of upgrading or looking at moving to Atmos and DTSX perhaps, then it's just certainly been a shortlist.
Yep, cool. It looks like a really nice product there. So, and like you say, I mean, it's not limited in any way really when you think about it. And I guess the only other route that they could have taken was to do a processor power amp combination. But then if you did that, it'd be far more expensive anyway. So yeah, it looks like a really decent product.
Absolutely.
Right, let's move on. Mark hasn't spoken yet, but he's going to speak now because Sky are doing something that Sky have never done. So they're obviously worried about their cash flow.
It's nothing to do with BT, this, nothing at all. They launched, they're going to launch a free sports channel called Sky Sports Mix, which will be available to all its customers in the UK and Ireland, as the free would imply, at no extra cost. So you will get a selection of live events, including La Liga, the MLS, which is the American Football League, some FIFA World Cup 2018.
American Soccer League, you should say, because American
Major
football
League
is it's a completely different thing, football over there.
Yes.
They wear helmets and shoulder pads and all sorts.
And then you do, which slightly surprised me, you're going to get a select, I'll use their wording, a select number of Premier League and Football League matches too. I think we can assume there won't be very many of those.
Well, it'll be Norwich, Bournemouth. And,
it might just be the first 10 minutes, and then subscribe to Sky will come up. Subscribe to Sky Sports will flash up on your screen or something. But it's obviously a little bit of a taster channel. It's probably part advert. You can pass it off as a nice bit of PR, I guess. You're giving stuff away to your customers, but BT are already doing that if you're a broadband customer. So yeah, it's you can't knock it, although I've just have. And it's coming sometime in the summer. Yeah,
it'd be better if you signed up for their broadband, you got Sky Sports for free. Like how you get BT Sports and Eurosport and all that, HD and all that kind of thing for free on BT.
It's max of that. It's a concession I think that they've had to make because they can obviously see customers hightailing it over to BT with their broadband deals, and they feel they've got to give something away, just to hang on to a few. I expect in reality it's not going to be that great a package for real sports fans. For real sports fans, it's obviously not going to be the full Monty, but it's better than nothing, I suppose.
Yeah. It'd be nice to see them bring the subscription prices down. That'd be nice.
Better, yes. Yeah. I don't know how much is it to subscribe to Sky Sports. Is it like £30 a month, then £10 for HD? So you're looking at £40 a month, then pay-per-views on top and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, if you were looking
at ticket halved.
If you were looking at ticket prices, though, to go to games and all the rest of it, then it kind of makes sense. If you support a team and their games are on there quite frequently, it kind of makes sense to spend that type of money, doesn't it? But when you support a lowly Scottish Championship team who are never on the TV, doesn't really make much sense to me to spend that much money.
No,
it's a lot of money.
Bothered about sports, so
yeah, it's I mean, it's one of these things. I mean, I got BT Sports, but the thing with the Premiership game on there, it's always like 12:45 on a Saturday. And by the time I remember it's on at 12:45 on a Saturday, it's usually well into the second half.
To be fair, that's quite well timed for me. I normally get to watch that one. But everyone's out, I get swimming, so that's my football time of the week.
Little treat for you.
It's my little treat, yeah. Everyone out.
I've got to say though, since I got rid of Sky, and I'm just speaking personally here, I'm not having a go at Sky in any way whatsoever, but since I got rid of it, I'm more than happy with Gary on a Saturday night and Match of the Day 2 on a Sunday night.
Yeah,
to catch up.
I actually find that a nice digestible way of watching the highlights of all the games. It's a good show. I mean, if you don't want to, maybe obviously if you're really into it and you want to watch the whole game and everything, it's fine, you can do that. But if you just want to get a quick catch up and watch the highlights, it's a great way of doing it on a Saturday.
Yeah,
evening.
I've got to say I don't miss the live games on a Sunday and stuff. And what I used to find myself doing was I'd be stuck to the sofa on a Sunday, from lunchtime through to 6 o'clock at night if I watched all the games that were on. That's your Sunday afternoon gone, and it's
a big investment of time, isn't it? I mean, 90 minutes plus, all the rest of it that goes on. You're looking at a couple of hours per game. There's just too much to watch as it is without committing 2 or 4 or 6 hours on a day to watch some football matches.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm quite happy to commit 2 or 6 hours a day to watching football whenever possible, but we're all different.
I used to do it, Mark. I used to do it, and nowadays I I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I fell out of love with football. Like a number of people have over the years.
It's all the money knocking about, and
Exactly.
Sky obviously.
Yeah.
And
it's just gonna get worse from next year because the big money comes in.
As if it wasn't big enough already.
Where's this coming from? Even more money.
5 billion over 3 years.
5 billion over 3 years for TV. Yeah. So I mean, it's just getting ridiculous now. But you also have to look at the league and think until this year, it was dominated by the big four. But because there's so much money sloshing around now, you got the likes of Leicester at the top of the league.
Well, you're right. It's completely changing things. Every team now can have 2 or 3 really, really good players who can change a game, and you get the right atmosphere. It's not a football podcast, is it? But the right atmosphere around the club and what have you, the right coach, and you can go places now. Everyone's got the money to do it. It's a bit more what's the word? Democratic.
More democratic. Yeah. I mean, I think Leicester's success this season has been the best thing to happen to the Premiership in years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you got to look at the other end of the table, and if you fall out of the Premier League, especially this year, and I'm looking at the likes of Sunderland and Newcastle, how big a dent is that for your finances? That has to be tens of millions that you're losing every year.
Oh, isn't there a sort of don't they get some sort of payments to make it slightly easier?
Well, you get
parachute
the parachute payment. Yeah,
but it's peanuts compared to what you get for being in the Premier League. I think it's a minimum of 130 million per team next year, which makes even the bottom club richer than everyone else, bar the really big teams in Europe.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that money's not flowing down; it kind of stops.
Yeah, it doesn't even flow into this country half the time. I was watching Match the Day on Saturday night, and every single player practically was a foreigner, and all the managers are foreign now as well. It's like I barely saw an English voice apart from the commentary team in the whole programme, and you're thinking, no wonder our national team's buggered.
Well, actually,
the irony of it is, well, I guess it's not really that ironic, but who are making money out of this in terms of English people are the commentators and the pundits. Cause
they're doing really well.
If you ever happen to watch any world sports channels, if you just manage to catch those somehow, you'll find out that the commentators and all the pundits all work for the likes of NBC and all the foreign channels, because the Premier League's syndicated to an awful lot of channels around the world, and they all work very hard. They must be coining it in on the back of the Premier League.
Talking about commentators, I actually found myself on Saturday night there, watching BBC Alba for live coverage of Hibs v Wraith Rovers. That's how low my football life has become. Yeah,
is it
Scottish Championship?
Did they do it in Gaelic, or was it?
Oh yeah, it's Gaelic commentators. So it's still better than watching Sky and the pundits on there.
Better than my out in.
Yeah,
chipping in.
Speaking of someone who's not so eloquent.
So yeah, that's an experience, but like I say, I've fallen out of love a bit, and we're way off subject. So let's get back on subject. Well, kinda. Virtual reality. A lot of pundits are saying that this is going to be the next big thing. That should prepare for living in a virtual reality, and films are going to be shot in virtual reality. There's Sky have announced that they're going to have a virtual reality studio, whatever that means. Mark, you can maybe fill us in on this one, but I'm going to come back to why I think this is going to fail, but tell us all about what's happening at the minute.
Well, Sky, as you say, same day they announced the free sports channel, said they're committing to virtual reality, at least in some way, with the opening of their Sky VR studio. They actually did their first broadcast is the wrong word, isn't it? Their first content over the weekend, which was the Formula One testing in Barcelona. And later in the year, they're going to be tackling other subjects other than sport, so drama and nature documentaries and all the rest of it. The stuff will be available via the Oculus platform, presumably through Samsung and LG's sites, through Facebook virtual reality. So yeah, they're yet another big organisation that are backing VR. Obviously, you're not going to be able to watch it through your Skybox. I don't want people putting a Skybox on their head thinking they'll be able to see virtual reality. Movies would be another thing. They recently did an event from the Force Awakens red carpet event. I can't imagine that was that exciting. But like you say, yeah, it is the next big thing other than 4K and HDR. And it seems to be the successor to 3D. Well, it is 3D in a lot of ways, of course. So let's just see how this one flows. If people didn't like putting glasses on at home, then how are they going to feel putting a helmet on?
Are the talking about helmets? Are the adult?
You've got to think that will happen for sure.
Well, anything where POV is point of view is used as a a creative medium, and I guess that is photography to a certain degree. Also, some gaming is an obvious example. Anywhere where there's a POV angle, that kind of headset virtual reality approach is going to be interesting to look at, but I can't see it really working in any kind of normal narrative film structure.
We see that it's perfectly made for the adult industry, and this is why I think VR is going to fail. It's not a social event. It's not something you're going to do with your mates. It's not something you're going to do with the family, because you basically have to wear this, at the moment, this headset. And it's a very personal thing. And that's why I think it'll be a niche, because there's always people who are interested in this kind of thing, and it's been around for a while now, so it will exist as a niche. But I think you'll see a big rush at the minute, because there's money to spend in promoting it and advertising it and all the rest of it. So you'll see a big rush of lots of coverage in the press, lots of coverage across the internet, lots of promotional stuff going on and so on. But once that money dries up and the public doesn't get involved, because they didn't get involved with 3D, and this is even less friendly in terms of being a social activity than 3D is, I think it's going to fail. And
also the entry price is quite steep as well now. I mean, I don't know how much Oculus is, but Sony announced their VR headset for the PlayStation 4 last week as well, didn't they? And that's £400 before you've even started buying any of the games, and that is some investment.
Now, but then you see as a sorry, Steve, you see as a gaming technology, again, maybe this will succeed, because in terms of social gaming, you tend to do that online, don't you? It's multiplayer online experiences and that kind of thing. It might work in that realm, in that environment, but like I say, as a family activity, I don't see it. I just don't see it happening.
Not at all. I mean, I definitely think it would be popular amongst certain aspects of the gaming community. Not all of them, because some people like to play with their friends and that sort of stuff. As you said, Phil, wearing a headset like that is immediately excluding everybody else. It's not, it's not something where you can combine, get together and do something. It's inherently exclusive rather than inclusive. So with some gamers, yes, I can see the appeal. Certainly, if you're playing, first-person shooters, wearing a headset could make it. I mean, we've seen that and experienced it to a degree. It shows it could make the gaming experience, quite very immersive and fun. But for anything else, I really don't see the appeal of it at all. I think that anyone who thinks this is going to be the next big thing, and VR's been the next big thing for at least the last 20 years, and it's never happened, because ultimately, I just don't see how it's. I mean, films. I think there's a film that's just been made called Hardcore Henry, which is shot entirely from point of view. But other than that, I can't see any films where, that's going to be the way to watch something. And as you said, Phil, watching a film, for example, is a communal sharing experience quite often, and people like to do that. No one's going to sit in the lounge, all of them wearing headsets and look like idiots. And if you do use VR, for watching pornography, make damn sure you're on your own in the room. Don't wake up, take it off afterwards, find a cup of tea by the side of your bed, and realise, No, I
speaking from personal experiences.
I think it's going to bomb with the general public. I don't think most people are going to give a damn. I mean, they didn't want to wear 3D glasses. They're sure as hell aren't going to stop.
Yeah, I think it's an entertainment platform as a social medium. I don't think it's going to work. Where it will work is in industry. I think there's a huge future for it in industry where, and we've certainly seen demonstrations of this. If you're an architect, you can walk somebody through your home designs. If you are an interior designer, again, you can show people what it's going to look like. And there's applications like that. So military as well. So there'll be applications where you can walk somebody through a battlefield or walk. There's so many applications that it can be useful in the business world. And I think those are the types of industries as well that will spend the money to develop it and so on. I think it's an entertainment thing. It's very much a personal use device, and it's going to be. I think gaming is where, like you say, point of view. First-person shooter, that kind of thing, that's where it makes a lot of sense, and it might get some traction. But I've got to say, you don't have to look like a bloody idiot wearing this stuff. And
like
those guys,
those
guys that were funnily enough, they weren't at CES this year, but the CES before, where they had the thing that you walk on, so you can walk in the environment. And all. I'm sorry, but if you got that in your house, that's serious S&M stuff. That really is.
We'll see,
I worry about it slightly on the health issues as well. How user tested is this stuff? Because if people were struggling with 3D like I did, and it made me feel quite unwell at times, and surely virtual reality is going to be even worse.
It's very disorientating when you're wearing it. very disorientating.
Anyone with motion sickness is going to struggle for a start.
I mean, I'd be curious, things like they were talking about with the Formula One, putting a camera on the car and then you wear the headset and you get to see the lap from the point of view of the driver.
Well, they'd have struck gold if they'd done that with Alonso this weekend, wouldn't they?
Blimey, yeah. But I can see that being fun for about 10 minutes. You'd quickly bore of it, though, wouldn't you? And think, well, I actually want to see what's going on the rest of the race now because all I can see is what this guy can see.
Yeah, but there's applications though that it could work. So if you wanted to go and have a look around the pit lane and actually see what is involved in that and all the rest of it, I mean that's quite a useful thing. You can walk yourself through, that environment. You want to go and visit Skywalker Ranch. You could go and visit Skywalker Ranch and walk around in virtual reality and all the rest of it. You want to go and visit, I don't know, the Playboy Mansion. You could go and do that.
Alta Towers have just opened up, or about to open up, a ride which is all based on virtual reality where it takes you to the moon, I think. The ride actually moves, but what you're seeing is not, obviously, the outside world. You're being transported up into space. So that might be quite interesting.
I'm not saying, and I guess what we're really talking about here is it going to work in the home, in an entertainment environment? And apart from gaming, I think we're all saying no, we don't see a future for it. And I don't think that's what it's designed for anyway. I think it's designed for far wider applications than just straightforward entertainment. And like I say, I mean, I think industries where it's really going to happen and industries where you can go and wander around environments or test products and that kind of thing, I think that's where it's really suited, and I think that's where the investment will be going forward. At the minute, there's lots of money to spend, it seems, on advertising and promotion, and this is why we're seeing it across so much of the internet and news channels and all the rest of it at the moment. But I just don't see it as an entertainment device, sorry. And then again, the other thing is that all three of us are in our 40s and not really the target audience here.
No, probably not.
No, definitely not. I mean, if I was a 20-year-old gamer, I'd probably be quite excited about VR. But personally, I couldn't give monkeys.
Yeah, I think the three old men here are saying it's over before it's begun. It's got its uses, don't get us wrong, and I'm sure it will be really popular in some sectors of the market. But in terms of home cinema, don't see it working. And that's basically just from the social aspect. I think if they make it more social, Steve, if you could put headsets on and see each other within the virtual place that you are or whatever, then that might be interesting and make it more of a social thing where you could punch hell out of each other or have
yeah, like a virtual fight club. That might be quite a good laugh.
Anyway, that wraps up hardware for this week. We'll be back in a sec with movie reviews without any reviews. Okay, so moving on to movie reviews without any reviews, and films coming up this Friday. We're going to have to rename this section, I think. But anyway, films coming up this Friday. There's a big superhero film. Whoop-de-doo. What is it, Steve?
Yeah, the latest superhero release of the year, one of many, has to be said. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, which is the, I guess, semi-sequel to Man of Steel. I mean, obviously, it does follow on from that film, but also incorporates a lot of DC's characters. So clearly Batman, but also quite a few other DC characters are going to be appearing in this film too. And the reason for that is in the subtitle, Dawn of Justice. What they're trying to do is create a Justice League movie in the same way that Marvel did with the Avengers. Only difference is that they're trying to do it very quickly, whereas I feel that Marvel did it in a more organic way and built it over a period of 6 films before they got to the Avengers. Here they're trying to do it basically in the second film. So it feels a little bit rushed, but whether the film can contain that many characters, all of whom are effectively going to be new, and some of them I don't think have ever been, portrayed on the big screen before, and maybe not even in live action before. Some of them are animated versions, but so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But from the trailers that I've seen, it looks interesting in some aspects. Certainly, the first trailer they did was great because it addressed one of the big issues I had with Man of Steel, which was the massive devastation at the end of that film. That's a major plot point in this film. Batman basically feels that Superman, with the powers that he's got and the destruction that was caused by him and General Zod at the end of Man of Steel, that he's a threat. And there's even a 1% chance he could turn bad. Batman feels he has to do something about it, and that's kind of the premise, the setup for this film. And that's an interesting point because if you do have a godlike alien with these incredible powers, what do you do about it? Because if they're good, well, that's fine. But if they suddenly turn bad or something happened, or more villains like General Zod suddenly turn up, you need to address it. So that's the premise. And obviously into that, they're going to shoehorn other DC characters and I assume other DC villains. So I'm interested in seeing it. It's expensive. It's, there's a lot riding on this in terms of, Warner Bros. Obviously not just in terms of this film and the cost of making it, but also it's establishing a franchise of movies, and specifically the Justice League. So if it doesn't work, if it doesn't do well, they could have a real problem on their hands. Well, I think it probably will do well. I think there's enough interest. And it's got an interesting cast too, in terms of obviously Henry Cavill playing Superman again. Ben Affleck, who got a lot of grief when he was cast as Batman, but I think he'll make a good Bruce Wayne in Batman. I think Ben's got the chin for it, if nothing else. He's got a good solid chin, so good enough reason for him to be.
It can't be as bad as Clooney.
No, well, we'll come back to that in a minute, I think. I think Ben Affleck's is a good choice ultimately, and he's been actually hired to write and direct and star in a standalone Batman movie after this film. So they're putting the pieces in place now. You've got Suicide Squad coming out later in the year, which again is set in the same universe, and that's got Jared Leto playing the Joker. So there's some really good actors in here, really interesting stuff going on in terms of the way they're structuring it. I think it feels a little bit rushed, but if it's done well and it's entertaining, mainly if it's just entertaining. My big problem so far with the DC movies, and I'm really I've only got Man of Steel to go on at this point, but having also seen the trailers for this film that's coming up, it's a bit sort of po-faced and serious and dark. Comic book movies meant to have a few laughs in there, and a bit by their very nature be more primary colours and bright and colourful, and there's not much of that going on. So it might be a bit dark and down, but as long as it's entertaining, ultimately, I think that'll be fine. And I am genuinely looking forward to Suicide Squad, which looked really good fun in the trailers. And maybe that's some of the aspect that's been missing so far. It's been the fun aspect, and if they have a laugh and enjoy themselves, because Deadpool, that's made $750 million worldwide, which off a budget of 40. So it's been a huge success, and it was irreverent, and it was funny, and it was fun. And yes, it was adult in terms of its tone, and that's a good thing, and hopefully that'll influence other comic book films to be more entertaining. Although I don't want studios to start doing things. We need to go R-rated now because that's the way to, big budget, big box office. Just let's make it more adult. Yeah, I would like to see more films being aimed at an adult audience, but don't just do it because Deadpool was a success. Do it because there's a reason within the terms of the plot to do that. If it makes sense creatively. But anyway, so this Friday, Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, and also there's Zootropolis, which for some weird reason in America was called Zootopia, and in here it's been retitled Zootropolis. I think Zootopia is a more interesting title, but anyway, it's Disney's new animated film with a bunch of animated animals, and apparently I haven't seen it yet because it hasn't opened, but the early reviews from the States, where it's been a big hit, are that whilst it's obviously aimed at kids and is fun for children, it's also full of some quite good adult jokes, jokes aimed at the parents and film references and this sort of stuff. So apparently it's quite good fun. So I'll probably see both, actually. I'll definitely see Batman vs Superman, and if I don't see Zootropolis at the cinema, I might get it on disc because it sounds like it might be fun. Okay, so that's opening this Friday. And Blu-rays that we could buy next week, Steve, is there anything worth my money? Well, there's Bridge of Spies, the Spielberg film. That'll be a no then. I've actually already got it. I bought it just to complete my Spielberg collection. Yeah, worthy and well acted, and obviously Mark Rylance won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor quite recently for his portrayal in this film, and he is really good in it. I mean, the performances are fantastic. It's very well made. It's very worthy. It's just a little bit boring. I think once again, the Honest Trailers Oscars, Honest Trailers thing, nailed it again. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Did. Okay, so let's move on. There's been a bit of news this last week that Harrison Ford is coming back, not in Star Wars, but as Indiana Jones. I am sorry, but is he coming back as how are they going to play this? Because he's not going to be running and jumping around and doing his own stunts or anything like that. Is he not at 70, whatever it is, his age these days? I think, apparently, when it goes into production, because it's obviously not being shot just yet, they need to write it first, but when it goes into production, Harrison Ford will be 76. So just not so much young Indiana Jones as geriatric Indiana Jones at this point, isn't it? I mean, much as I love Harrison Ford, and great though he was in The Force Awakens, I just think, do we really want to see Indiana Jones running around in his late 70s? That feels unnecessary, particularly since we've, the previous Indiana Jones film was not exactly a great success. Yeah, though this one won't involve George Lucas, so maybe that's a good thing. Yeah, I think that's maybe a good thing. But again,
I think it has to be a certain kind of Indiana Jones this time around, doesn't it? I mean, it can't be the whole swashbuckling, crazy stunts. Not him anyway. No. Not at that age, because like you say, I mean, it just wouldn't work. Crystal Skull, you were getting to the point where, yeah, he's looking a bit really old now, and there was a lot of old jokes in there in the screenplay, and obviously that made it to screen as well about, you're getting on old man and all the rest of it, and so I mean, they're not going to make the same jokes again, are they? Because that just gets boring. So the way I'd like to see them play it is it's an Indiana Jones movie, but it's not about Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. In terms of a swashbuckling adventure, it's more of a handover movie, or where he plays a role in a bigger story or a wider plot, and I think there's plenty for them to work on there.
Maybe, although thinking about it, one of the really fun things about Raiders of the Lost Ark was clearly it was paying homage to the cliffhanging serials of the 30s, and it was set in the 30s. It was set before World War II, with Nazis running around and and supernatural stuff going on and archaeological things going on, and it was fantastic fun. And I absolutely love Raiders. I'm not such a big fan of any of the others, to be honest, but I think Raiders absolutely nails it. But if you're going to address the fact that Harrison Ford is now so much older than the character was in Raiders of the Lost Ark, it means you have to move the timeline on into what the 50s in Crystal Skull. So now we're talking about what, the 60s. Is that really the kind of fun period,
Austin
where you
Powers.
can run around with Nazis and all this sort of stuff and have that kind of thing going on? You can't do that anymore. So,
well, it'd have to be Cold War, which doesn't really make for interesting, does it? Really? Does it? It's
no. I mean, it didn't work very well in Bridge of Spies.
No, well, and you look at Crystal Skull. I mean, some of the stuff that they talked about in there, Ray Winston's character and him talking about stuff, and you're thinking, I want you to see that film. That sounds really interesting. Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. That film, not only did it fail in its, as a piece of entertainment, it also gave us a completely new phrase for something going, just going completely wrong, which was nuking the fridge. Yeah. When that nuclear bomb goes off at the beginning, and he's inside the fridge.
And they explained it saying, well, it was lead lined fridge, so he survived. He wouldn't have survived the G-forces of that
the G-forces, the shock, the force so that many other factors attached to that, and the heat that would have been coming through there.
It's a real shame that Mythbusters is in the final series and they're not going to cover that, because that would be one that I'd want them to do. Could you survive a nuclear blast in a fridge? Be interesting how they get the methodology for that one.
Yeah, I mean, that was in the first 10 minutes of the film, wasn't it? So we're like, okay, this is not going to be very good.
You kind of knew it was going to suck as soon as you saw the Prairie Dogs comedy. And it was like, oh, dear.
Because, you went from that mountain in the very first film, which was, going from the Paramount logo
to the mountain. That was excellent.
And then we go from a Paramount logo to a Prairie Dog hill of dirt. Okay, I think we've set the bar pretty low for this one. Yeah, I mean, obviously the reason Disney want to do this is because they bought both Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and they want to get another franchise going because they're not making enough money already off of Star Wars. But
or the Marvel side.
I don't understand why Harrison Ford's doing it. I suppose chuck enough money at the guy, and I think fair enough, I'll turn up. I'm not quite sure why Spielberg's doing it though, because I mean, he doesn't need to do it. He's got some integrity these days. I mean, maybe everyone said Bridge of Spies was so boring, thought maybe I should do something a bit more entertaining. But I don't understand why they're doing it. I guess if they can come up with a good script and a good concept, and you're right, you said, Phil, maybe get a young, really charismatic young guy actor in to sort of like carry the torch and take over from India.
Not Shia LaBeouf, please.
No, not Shia LaBeouf. Even he admitted it didn't work out on that film. So it'd be interesting to see who they choose to play the young version of Harrison Ford in the Han Solo movie that's being made as well. Because I've seen a short list of actors, none of which I thought looked or sounded anything like Harrison Ford. But I guess you want someone with charisma. That's the key aspect, isn't it?
Well, just think about it, right? If you look at slightly like a younger Harrison Ford and you can act a little bit, you could absolutely coin it in, couldn't you?
There's a career in it almost, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it seems like Harrison Ford's now spending his sort of retirement years remaking or doing sequels to films of his from the past. So obviously Force Awakens, Indiana Jones, and he's also doing Blade Runner 2 as well. So I wonder what other films Harrison Ford can make sequels to.
He is though, even though he is the age that he is a man of steel, isn't he? I mean, his real life stuff compared to the action movies. I mean, crashing a plane on a golf course and surviving. I mean, come on. Only Harrison Ford could pull that one off.
Didn't he also crash on the golf course to avoid hitting houses or a school or something, wasn't it? So he was quite a bit of a genuine real-life hero there, the way that he handled it and then walked away from that crash.
It could only have been better if it was the Millennium Falcon, really.
It was a bit sad he broke his leg getting hit by a door on the Millennium Falcon, though, wasn't it? Really outside of it.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. I've got to say, Crystal Skull, probably one of the... I'd say it's probably one of the worst films of recent times, just because you got such a love. I mean, I hate the prequels, but, you know, at the same time, my nephew loves the prequels, and he's the kind of age for that, so I kind of forgive them that. But Crystal Skull is just a complete and utter waste of everybody's time and money, basically. Yeah. So it goes.
I don't know anyone who likes that film, do you?
No, I don't know anybody that does. So it's certainly, for me, is one of the worst films I think I've ever seen. Now, interestingly, we did last week worthy films and admitted to those that we hadn't seen, and we worked from a list of 100. And this time around, we're looking at the lists of films that are considered to be the worst ever made, and how many of them have we seen or admitting to that we have seen. And I've got to say, I've just started to go through the list. I've actually seen one of them from... actually, I've seen two of them.
I've seen two. I saw the very first one on the list.
From the 1950s, and that's Glen or Glenda. And funnily enough, Plan 9 from Outer Space, which are both Ed Wood films. And the reason I handed those out was because of Tim Burton's film, little known film actually, and I think really underrated film, which was Ed Wood, and based on the director and his life. And of course, Plan 9 from Outer Space was the last film appearance of Bela Lugosi, and you get to see a bit of his tragic ending in Tim Burton's movie. So I mean, I handed those two out. Funnily enough, they were on DVD. I was able to find them and watch them, and Glen or Glenda I could have done without, but actually Plan 9 from Outer Space, it is really entertaining. I found it really
unintentionally.
Unintentionally, but really entertaining. And I guess a lot of that was because you got a little bit of the background in Tim Burton's movie. So when you actually went and handed out the actual films, there's a lot of stuff you were already in on the joke kind of angle to it. So that was quite funny. So good for the 50s. I've seen two. For the 40s, I haven't seen either of those. The 30s, I haven't seen that one either. And just so people can keep up with us, we're using the Wikipedia list of films considered the worst. We'll put a link in the podcast forum. 1960s, let's have a look. Very quickly going through this. I can safely say I've seen none of the 1960s films. 1970s...
You've seen a few of those, I reckon.
I've seen The Swarm.
I've seen Exorcist 2, The Swarm, I Spit on Your Grave, Caligula, So
I wish I'd seen An American Hippie in Israel. That would have been good, wouldn't it? There's some classic titles there.
Bat Pussy, what the hell is that
Pussy,
about?
yeah, I'm missing out there.
So I mean, there's some interesting ones. I Spit in Your Grave, I mean, that was big back in the video nasty side of things. It was never a great film, but it was contained within that, wasn't it? So and The Swarm, that used to be on the TV a lot. I've seen that.
Some funny stories about that film from Michael Caine, who starred in it, was saying that they obviously he said that because it's about a swarm of bees, and they had all these bees on set, and what they had was a bunch of, like he said, I think he described as a bunch of wetbacks in a trailer who were there with tweezers pulling the stings out of all these bees, and every now and then they'd miss one, so they were the hot ones you wanted to avoid because you're liable to get stung otherwise. It's not a great film. Not a great film at all. The dying right at the very end of that 70s disaster movie craze, isn't it? It was like a pretty rubbish one at the end.
So let's move on to the 1980s in this list. It seems to be more in the 80s than any other decade. Looking through these, Heaven's Gate, no. Apple, no. Tarzan, Ape Man, yes, saw that one.
Yes.
Oh, there had to be a George Lucas film other than Crystal Skull in here, and that is Howard the Duck.
Is that George Lucas? I've seen that one. Yeah, that was shocking.
Yes, it's George Lucas production.
Yeah. Interestingly, they're looking at bringing back Howard the Duck.
He's you do actually see him at the very end of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah.
He appears right at the very end, and I guess as a possible future Howard the Duck movie. I mean, these days with CG, you could do it much better than the original Howard the Duck, which was a little person with a very unrealistic mask on. Really didn't swing it even in '86. That was pushing your luck.
So further down the list, obviously we've got Superman, The Quest for Peace. I'm not sure if
Stinker.
I'm not sure if I remember that one. Maybe I'm just blocking that out of my memory. Garbage Pail Kids, never ever saw that one. Know why it was around though. I've got a funny feeling I have seen Hobgoblins. For some strange reason, I think I have seen that one. And again, I think it was round about the time of the video nasties and that kind of thing, and trying to search out these films on VHS back then. Because what was the other one that was really popular? Critters. You remember Critters?
Yeah.
It was really popular. Unfortunately, it's not on this list. It really should be. Mac and Me and The Thing. So that's the 1980s out of the way, and I've only seen 2 of those. Anybody else? Sorry, 3 of those.
I've seen a worryingly large number of these films, and I actually own quite a few of them on Blu-ray, which is even more worrying.
Really?
Yeah, okay. Well, I've seen Reefer Madness. A lot of these early ones, like you, Phil, I kind of saw them on TV when they were, there used to be a series of, there'd be like a season of films, bad films. So I saw Reefer Madness, and I saw Glen and Glen, The Robot Monster, The Conqueror, and Plan 9 from Outer Space, all of which are rubbish. The Conqueror's great. That's the one with John Wayne playing Genghis Khan. Shot in the Nevada desert where they'd been testing A-bombs, and almost the entire cast died of cancer afterwards. They're all a very abnormally high number of people who worked on that film died of cancer, and they think it's because they were filming in places that were riddled with radiation after the testing. And also, obviously, John Wayne was horribly miscast as Genghis Khan. 60s ones I haven't seen any of, I don't think. 70s, like you, I've seen Exorcist II, The Heretic, and The Swarm, I Spit on Your Grave, and Caligula. In the 80s, I don't actually think Heaven's Gate's a bad film. I'm going to have to take that off the list. I think Heaven's Gate's really good. Tarzan the 8th Man I watched for Bo Derek, obviously. Mommy Dearest I've seen. Howard the Duck, yeah. Ishtar, yeah. Superman 4, I actually considered walking out of the cinema, and that one it was so bad, but I do own it on Blu-ray, along with Heaven's Gate and Caligula, and Exorcist II, The Heretic. 90s, I saw Highlander 2 at the cinema, and it is crap. And Showgirls I've got on Blu-ray. It's an awful film, but it's camp fun, to be fair. Batman and Robin I've got on Blu-ray, and that is rubbish.
I went to the cinema for that one,
I didn't see that at cinema, I'm glad to say.
Dear me, yeah, I did.
It's a stinker of a film. I love actually it's worth getting the Blu-ray for Joel Schumacher's commentary track, where he publicly apologises for the film at the beginning of the commentary and says, I'm really, really sorry about this. And then goes on to explain what happened, where it all went wrong, because it is kind of an absolute train wreck of a film. And he does explain what was happening in terms of, things like he'd never heard the word toy-centric before. Yeah. But they wanted stuff to be toy-centric so they could sell toys off the back of it.
But you've got to think, though, the cast list is really quite impressive. You've got George Clooney, Schwarzenegger, Uma Thurman, Chris O'Donnell, Alicia Silverstone. It's not like it's a bad cast list, really, when you think of them in terms of box office pool, and some of them can actually act as well.
Yes, although going through those quotes we were for the beginning of this podcast, I remember just how many terrible, terrible one-liners they gave to Schwarzenegger in relation to him being Mr. Freeze. I've got to say, there is a monumental absence in film missing from this list for the 90s. Where's Theodore Rex?
Yep, it's not here.
That's a
which says if these are considered the worst films, that Theodore Rex is actually quite a good film.
Well, I can tell you what, I'd watch Showgirls over Theodore Rex any day of the week, and not just for the nudity. Battlefield Earth I've seen in the 2000s. Have you seen that?
No, I avoided that one like the plague. Honest, haven't seen that one. Rancid Aluminium, no, I can't remember that one.
Freddy got fingered.
Tom Green, I remember Tom Green. He didn't last very long, did he?
No, good.
Glitter, Mariah Carey. No. I'm going through this. There's not a lot of them. I thought there'd be more of these that I have seen.
I've seen nothing since the 90s of these.
Sex Lives of the Potato Men. What the?
I'm really glad to say that I've obviously got a lot more, careful about what I watched in the noughties and the tens.
Oh, Catwoman.
Oh, I might have seen that.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that. Have you seen that?
Michelle Pfeiffer?
Yeah,
no.
It's Halle Berry.
Oh no. I wouldn't mind seeing Halle Berry in a Catwoman outfit. That would be quite nice.
She looks like a sort of down market stripper in her outfit. Like she should turn up at your front door, for a bachelor party.
Yeah, and a lot of them in there I haven't seen, and then looking at 2010s, going through the list, and like I say, we'll put the link for the list so you can go through this as well. But luckily, I haven't seen any of those either. So
I have seen, and I only watched it because it was supposed to be so bad, and it is really bad, is movie 43. And it's got a huge cast of really big stars. And I can only assume they blackmailed them into being in the film because there's just no other explanation for some of it.
You've got Dennis Quaid, Greg Kinnear, Hugh Jackman, Kate Winslet, Naomi Watts, Anna Faris, Emma Stone, Richard Gere, Uma Thurman. Yeah, you've got quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, big names, and it's awful. It is truly, truly awful. I'm not even going to describe some of it because it's really quite unpleasant, and I don't want to offend anyone. But it is worth seeing, if only to see just how appallingly bad it is. Nice to see that there's 2 Adam Sandler films on the list, Jack and Jill, and That's My Boy. The Last Airbender I have not seen, but apparently has a great line where someone says there's a lot of good benders in the north, because Airbender is not meant to be homosexual, but something to do with some special powers. But infamously has some quite funny lines, unintentionally, I guess, unless you're English. Perhaps in America it wouldn't mean anything, but over here it made it very funny. Unfortunate title, really.
Well, it's kind of like when I used to smoke and we were over in the States and I used to say, I'm just going out for a fag, which seemingly is not the thing to say in the States.
There's some...
I've got to say, it's not a very good list, this one. I think, like you say, I mean, there's some pretty obvious ones that are missing from here, which could possibly have been here, like Theodore Rex.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, Kingdom of the Christmas Skull.
Crystal Skull, I like the sound of that.
It could only be better, Mark.
The sequel to Santa Claus versus the Martians.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that this list has done is... I'm not sure if I've got Ed Wood on Blu-ray. I might have to go and hunt Ed Wood out and watch it again because I think it's a utterly
available in
underrated film.
It's a good
film. Really
film,
is.
yeah. Leonard Part 6 spectacularly failed, partly because there is no Leonard Part 1 to 5. It was meant to be a joke in the title, but no one got it. Be careful what you call your film.
Yeah, but that was the same with, what was it? Was it Richard III?
The Madness of King George was originally Madness of George III, but they thought Americans might think there were 2 other films prior to that.
Yeah, that's it. Was it not Henry V as well? No?
Well, there is a Henry IV though, isn't there? So in that case, that's a valid expectation. I mean, as in terms of Shakespeare plays.
Anyway, I think on that Shakespearean bombshell, and I don't think at any point
highbrow ending.
Far too highbrow for us lot. That's it for the podcast this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
Stay cool, bird boy.
And Mark Hodgkinson.
Freezing hell, Batman.
And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can bookmark AVForums for the latest reviews, news and video. And of course, leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes. We'll read your name out on the show, but only if it's a 5-star rating. And like I say, we're only around for the next few Wednesdays. So from Wednesday the 6th is the last podcast that goes out on a Wednesday. And then from the 11th of April, you get the podcast 2 days earlier. I think that's a good way of selling it to them, Steve, isn't it?
At least that 1 week it'll be 2 days earlier. After that, it'll be just every week.
It's an introductory offer.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay. So I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.